Welcome back to Counterpoint as we unpack the recent federal election results. Recounts are still happening, so finally all the numbers are in. And join me again are Mike Donison and Andrew Perez. Andrew, we saw some generational shifts, obviously some cohort shifts in terms of where different cohorts were supporting parties that maybe traditionally they hadn't previously. Unpack some of those for us.
Yeah, there were several what I would call seismic shifts emerging from this election. And for me, the central question moving forward, are these seismic shifts permanent, or was this election an anomaly? So number one, demographically, to the point Mike made, there's no doubt that it was turned on its head to see the boomer generation shift more liberal and the under 35 demographic shift more conservative. We've never seen that, certainly in my lifetime. If that's a permanent fixture on our electoral landscape, that will have repercussions. In terms of the two-party system, many have said we're now officially into a two-party system. That allowed both main parties to have a popular vote above 40%, which is unprecedented. We don't see, we've had national parties form majority governments with 37 or 38% popular support, and yet the Liberals won almost 44% popular support, and that wasn't even enough for a majority. So I will be interested to see, will the NDP permanently become basically an afterthought, or will they be able to reemerge as the third or fourth party in parliament? And so I think these are interesting questions. And finally, on the demographics in terms of profession, we saw the NDP vote hemorrhage. The working class NDP vote overwhelmingly went conservative, and the white collar NDP vote overwhelmingly went liberal. And so again, is this permanent, or will Pierre Poilievre even be leader in 3 years? Because he was certainly a reason for why that blue-collar vote went conservative. And so these are just some of the questions that I'll be looking at exploring over the coming years.
And Mike, to that point, I recall that one of the recounts, it was a very close race, but you're right. I think they picked up 2 seats in the automotive belt of Ontario, which is in the Windsor area. Talk to me about that, and then also that very close recount.
Well, first of all, yeah, there were 4 judicial recounts, and there was a turnaround. The one I'm interested in is Newfoundland. The Liberal had a 12-vote lead on election night, validated by 12, but when the judicial recount, the Conservative won by 12. That's very unusual. Judicial recounts seldomly overturn the result, but in that case, but the Terrebonne is the other one in Quebec. The final result is the Liberal beat the Bloc by 1 vote.
Oh, wow. And then to think of that person who's like, oh, I should have gone out and voted. You literally would have made the difference in the election. But okay, speak to me about the process. So is there a certain ballot difference or a vote differential which automatically triggers a recount? Who gets to petition for a recount, and what does that process look like?
Yeah, the basic rule is after the returning officers validated the results, if the distance between the first and second candidate is less than 1/10 of 1%, of the total votes counted, there's an automatic judicial recount. We had 3 of those. But even if it's a little more than that, any individual, a candidate or an individual citizen, that was the case with the Windsor seat, can also apply for judicial recount. That was granted. So there were really 4 judicial recounts. But it's automatic if it's that close.
Wow. Okay. That's, again, a lot of people don't know this scene in Canada. We've seen a lot of this happen south of the border with these tight races. Of course, we remember the Bush versus Gore election and that dramatic recount. But this is interesting. So seats were shifting. The numbers kept shifting the last few weeks. So let's talk about one race that the Conservatives lost, and that's Pierre Poilievre's seat. I'll start with you, Andrew. He failed to hold on to his seat. There were 91 candidates on the ballot. Apparently, there's a group called the Longest Ballot Committee, and it's a protest group that aims to reform Canadians' electoral system, and they claim that to have stacked the deck against Poilievre. Is that kind of activity... Well, first, let's talk about Pierre. What does it mean when that he lost his seat, Andrew?
I mean, I think it's indicting. There's been a lot of misinformation and disinformation out there on social media and even mainstream media around why he lost the riding. Many of conservatives have suggested it was because of redistribution. In fact, if you look at the redistribution, it actually favors the Conservative Party. Now, the long ballot, I'm sure that had an impact. Was that the reason why he lost by 4,000 or 5,000 votes? I don't think so. I think you had a very committed Liberal candidate. And I think the Freedom Convoy and the positioning of Poilievre around the Freedom Convoy had a major impact.
Okay, Mike, do you agree? Actually, you know what? We're about to cut to commercial. I'm not going to throw it to you. But when we come back from commercial, we'll talk about what the future of the Conservative Party looks like, especially with the leader that doesn't have a seat. We'll be right back.